Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a review of the FF7 starter deck. So let's just jump right into it. Alright, so like I said, we're going to be doing an unboxing here. This is a brand new set. So let's go ahead and open this. Let's see, we've got a little separation here. I love that they do this, very simple to open. In the box, also, if you're a brand new player, it does come with two instruction manuals / playmats so that you can learn to play the game. So we'll put this right back where it was. Alright, so we've got the Cloud starter set and the Sephiroth starter set. Both sets come with one foil full art, which I think is a great value for the starter sets, but 3 copies of the card as a whole. So let's go ahead and start with the Cloud set. They typically have a thing around here. Let's check the other side. Nope, there we go, I got it. So, very easy to peel. And then love that, very clean. And then they typically come pretty stuck together, so alright, there we go. So let's go through the Cloud set, right? To start off with, you have I think there's a few key pieces in this deck that I think are really interesting. The first off is Cloud himself, right? 2-drop, dull him, put 1 Category 7 forward into the break zone, search for 1 forward that costs 1 CP more than the forward put into the break zone, and play it onto the field. You can only use this ability during your main phase. So there's several things going on here, right? Obviously, you have to break an FF7 character, an FF7 forward to do his ability. So a little limiting there, but it's Cloud. You're pretty much going to run him in an FF7 deck anyway. I do like, though, that you don't have the restriction of the FF7 forward in what you go search for. So this opens up a lot of different plays that you can put, you could break a 2-drop and drop in a 3-drop. Obviously, you're going to be doing this a lot with something that has an entry effect. And funny enough, you could even choose Cloud himself. You could break Cloud and put in a 3-drop. I'm sure there's going to be situations where that's going to happen, but typically you're going to want to try to get good value out of this, so he's probably going to be the last one you break. I do wish you could play the ability at any time, so it'd be a great combat trick. Let's say you go to block, you break your forward, and you bring out a new forward. You've now blocked successfully, and you have a new forward out. But even as just main phase, I think this will be really interesting to see. I haven't managed to get it to work yet in my deck, but I am working on it, as I'm sure others are. We'll see if we can be the first ones to figure this out. The next big piece here is 3-drop Vincent. So 3-drop Vincent actually has 2 specials, which I think is really interesting. Death Gigas. Until the end of turn, Vincent gains plus 1000 power, first strike, and when Vincent attacks, choose 1 dull forward of cost 4 or less, break it. That's awesome. You kind of have to... You can do it as a combat trick, right? So you attack, they block, you now have plus 1k for a strike. In order to get the second... If they don't have anything dull, right? But in order to get the second part of that, where you break something on attack, you have to do it before you declare your attack. And that's one of the things I've always had an issue with Vincent, is that all of his specials... For whatever reason, I have to go through all of them, but you almost always do it, you have to do it beforehand, which means that it's a little less of a combat trick. You can still use it that way, obviously, but to really get that full effect, you're going to do it beforehand. The second part, which is, I think, what makes this card, activates when you have 5 damage. So, you can still do Death Gigas, but you wouldn't normally, because you can choose Chaos at this point, because he gets both. And then Chaos says Vincent gains plus 3000 power, first strike, and when Vincent attacks, choose 1 character and break it. this effect does not end at the end of your turn. At the end of the turn. That is amazing. You've got, I think this is the first special that doesn't end at the end of the turn. So you Chaos, he now becomes a 10k first strike, and every time he attacks, he's going to break a character. That's insane. It means you can break a backup every turn, you can break a monster, you can break a forward. The difficulty is going to be in keeping him alive long enough and getting Chaos off, right? So if you're not giving him haste, then you really need to protect him. So obviously, because Vincent's so important, the deck is running 3 of the Opus 4 Hero Vincent, which is a 5-drop EX Burst searches for Vincent. So obviously you play him, or he EX bursts, and you're getting the other Vincent. Hopefully, you've got the other Vincent in hand, and so you're playing one and already have the special ready in hand. His special, if you are playing him and you decide to do this special, is Vincent gains plus 4,000 power until the end of turn. It's basically just a decent combat trick. So there you go. There's a Vincent with the combat trick. So let's put that over. Alright, so we're going to skip ahead here a little bit. This is me talking about the backups and summons and some of the other cards that have been in the game for quite some time. In the interest of keeping this video somewhat short, I'm going to try to focus on some of the newer cards here. If you are interested in the full video, let me know in the comments below and I can post that up too. And then moving into Fire, you've got 2 other new forwards. You've got the new 3-drop Barret, which I'm iffy about, right? I think you need to be, the deck kind of needs to be built with this in mind. Because Barret will do 1,000 damage for each Category 7 character you have, so the backups make a difference there. And so he'll typically finish something off that's already damaged. He won't be able to kill it on its own. And that'll combo well with like the last set's Zac, which actually is in this deck, which is really impressive. Because then he comes in, Zac will do 4k because of Barret's entry, and then Barret will do his damage on top of that, and that typically will be enough to finish something. So very interested in those combos. But the nice thing is that he's EX Burst, and when he EXs, he does 2,000 damage for every FF7 character. So double the damage, and that could be enough to kill something on its own. Very interesting. And then, well, you know, once he's come in and done his damage, really, you can use Cloud, break him, and bring in Tifa or something, you know, something that's a 4-drop. And I think a perfect example of a 4-drop is Red 13. This Red 13 is my favorite Red 13 that's come out so far, and I actually put him in my Final Fantasy VII deck, which I'll be doing a video on later. But he has done so much work. At being a 4-drop 8k, he's on curve, but he's on curve at a power level that's much more relevant nowadays than before. And then his ability, if you control another FF7 character, forward, sorry, I keep switching those around, another FF7 forward, he gains plus 1,000 power, haste, and first strike. That makes him a 9k first strike with haste, making him dangerous. In my version, I have Mimodi, so I'm also giving him Brave, so he makes a great attacker and blocker. And the fact that he needs just any other FF7 forward means he's not as vulnerable as many other forwards that depend on, you know, a certain card name or whatever, because typically you're going to have 3-4 forwards out at any time, so even if they break one as part of a combat trick, Red 13 doesn't lose his plus 1k and first strike. So again, we're going to speed up here in the sake of time and go through some of these other older cards. Here we're looking at 2-drop Tifa, 4k haste. It's another FF7 forward. Moving along, we've got Zac, which is surprising to see here, as he's a hero from this last opus, from Opus 10, but definitely fits the theme of the deck, being an FF7 character that can ping. We've also got Soldier 3rd class, FF7 forward that isn't unique, so you can play multiple copies on the board, and searches for another copy of himself. So, not bad. Definitely a piece I would expect to see in the deck, and maybe even see in the future FF7 builds. Going to the backups here, we have Red Mage, which can give, choose one forward and it cannot block. Not a bad add here. I believe we go into Black Mage here, which will combo well with Zac and or Barrett. To finish things off, it can break itself to do 4k. We have Sage to give your forwards haste if it's Cloud or one of your attackers like Barrett or something like that, and then a 4-drop Phoenix, which can bring a 2-drop forward back into the field. Not a great summon, I think, for the deck, but it's in there. It fits the theme. The last piece, I think, is probably the most exciting thing besides Cloud and Red 13 in this whole deck. Aerith is amazing. She's a light character. You pay 4 and choose up to 2 Category 7 characters, which is very important because that means you can also bring back FF7 backups from the break zone into your hand. It essentially makes her free. I think one of the other really nice tricks, what I would love to see done, is Cloud's on the field, Zac's on the field, you play Barrett, break something, use Cloud, to break Barrett into the put him in the break zone, bring in an Aerith, and now you get Barrett and something else from the break zone into your hand. But you know, that's kind of like the dream play. That's not going to happen very often. It takes a little bit of setup. But on her own, Aerith is amazing. And then on top of that, what I love about her is that you can pay 1 and break her, and choose 1 Category 7 forward you control, dull it. It gains this forward cannot be broken until the end of turn. Or you can you pay 1 and break her and choose 1 dark forward and break it. Having a light character that can break themselves is very important because you can free your board up to play another Aerith, or you know, if you're playing Kadaj or something, which is something I'll get into in a little bit, you can do that. The fact that she also protects your other FF7 forwards is really important. Protecting Cloud or protecting Zac just gives you that time to set up. So that's the Cloud deck. Overall, I like it. I think it's a very good starter deck. You could very easily buy this, play this at your locals, and do decently. There's definitely some fixes and some things you can do to get more power out of the deck. And I'll be like I said, I'll be showing my FF7 deck later in another video. For now, we'll set that aside, and let's go into the Sephiroth deck. See if I can get this thing this time. There we go. So I'll go all the way around. I failed to do twice now. There we go. And then alright. So same as the Cloud deck, you get 3 copies of Sephiroth. The first one is a full art foil, which I absolutely love. And at first glance, I actually thought this Sephiroth was really, really strong, and it still may be. I think there are people that are gonna figure this out and make it work. Let's just go over his abilities first. When Sephiroth attacks, dull all the forwards opponent controls with 8,000 power or less. At the end of each of your turns, remove 3 cards from the break zone from the game, or put Sephiroth into the break zone. So basically, Sephiroth's gonna come in. When he swings, you're gonna essentially dull your opponent's entire all of their forwards, because even if they're over 8,000, you're gonna play him with Rain. You can play him with one of the summons that reduces power, and you're gonna get everyone under that 8k, so that you make sure that when Sephiroth swings, everything gets dulled. That said, you also get a 3-drop 9k, which is really important. And the fact that he's a Sephiroth means that he can be pitched for so many other specials. So I can see this being played somewhere. The other thing is that in Opus 11, when that comes out, there's another Sephiroth that's coming out for Dark. It's going to be the legendary for the set that is just ridiculously powerful. But if you want to learn more about that, maybe I'll post a link to the spoiler there. What really weighs this card down is the fact that you have to remove 3 cards from your break zone from the game, which is unfortunate because in this game there's so much recursion that you can't just afford to remove 3 cards a turn. Also, you can't play him early. You just don't have enough cards in the break zone to sustain him. So we'll see. I'm iffy about this for now. Azul, I think, is our new Dataluma. So for those of you that were around for the Dataluma ban, that wasn't that long ago, I think Azul replaces him. When Azul is dealt damage, choose one forward opponent controls, deal it 1,000 damage. At damage 3, and remember, these are, he gains this on top of the other one. So at damage 3, he gains the same ability, but he does 2,000. And at damage 5, he does the same thing, but does 3,000. So when you're at damage 5, he's going to do 1, 2, and 3. So he'll ping something for 6k. And the reason I say they're separate because for things that do mitigation, damage mitigation, each one is a separate ping. But at damage 5, you're generally hitting something for 6,000 every time you ping him. So I guarantee we're going to see this with Cactars or something of the nature. It's just a matter of time. So let me put these over here. And moving along again, we have NGL Penance. Haste breaks something, dull if it does damage. Not a bad add here in Lightning. We have the Lightning Red Mage to haste your forwards. Restrictor, which searches your Svets, basically Azul. And then you've got the two new FF7 backups from earlier in this set. Don't recall what they do exactly, but I don't remember being all that impressed with them. As far as summons go, the lightning summon here is Ramuh. Not that bad. In Ice, you have Don Cornero, which I think is a really interesting forward because you can dull him and do one of 3 different effects. You can mill yourself, or take the top 2 cards of your deck and put it in your break zone to dull a forward. I think this will be really handy late game when you're trying to push for game and something, and you got a forward that you need to dull and get out of your way, or something that maybe Sephiroth can't dull. That's a good way to get around it. And 2 cards isn't a huge cost to do it when you need it. This is where things get interesting though. Put the top 7 cards of your deck into the break zone, choose 1 dull forward, and break it. Again, I could see this being used from time to time. I think that this is something that if there's something that's really making you, like, you just can't get around it, milling 7 cards, not the worst thing in the world. Hell, the 5-drop Fire Cloud in the previous sets, you have to mill yourself for 10 cards for him to come back into play. Now, granted, you're getting him back when he's being broken, and you're pinging to hopefully break something, so you're getting a little bit more value there on that, but this will just straight break something that's dull for 7 cards. So I could see people using that. This is where I don't see this card. The last abilities I see being very rarely used, because you're going to mill yourself the top 15 cards of the deck into your break zone, choose 1 forward, and you gain control of it as long as you have Don Cornero on the field. The problem with that is that that's a very risky play. Don Cornero is a 2-drop 5k forward. Very, very easy to break. So you're going to mill 15 cards, take control of something, and they can very easily break Don Cornero and take their forward back. I could see it if you're really in a tight place and let's say you want to steal one of their forwards to block one of their own attackers and they're both going to break. But even then, it's very niche. If you do that and then your opponent happens to have a summon or something that they can do to just break Cornero right then and there, your entire plan kind of fails. So I don't see that ever being used. And the other 2 abilities are pretty useful though, and having another ice character is great, and bringing Don Cornero into the game is always a plus. So I think this is probably the card I'm most excited for in this deck in Ice, and I can see this being played in a lot of Ice decks, if not all Ice decks going forward, even if they're not FF7 decks. And that is, when Cait Sith enters the field, your opponent reveals their hand. You may select 1 card in their hand other than a backup. If you do so, remove it from the game. Your opponent draws a card. So for a 2-drop, so this is very similar to Zidane, right? Zidane is a 3-drop win forward. When he comes into play, look at your opponent's hand, remove a card, or break a card. This removes it from the game, but you're also not taking their hand size down. They're gonna draw back up to whatever they were at before. But you could play this turn 1, look at your opponent's hand, and plan accordingly. You get so much information from just looking at your opponent's hand, and then if they do have a problem card in their hand, a problem forward typically, or a monster. Let's say a common play I can see happening is Ice versus Ice. They have Scale Toad. You play Kate Sith and Scale Toad's in their hand. You're like, nope, remove that from the game. And now it can't be recurred. It's being removed from the game. So, very interesting. Here we're moving into the DGS Troopers. 2 searches for the 3, searches for the 4, and then they all pump each other. The Sephiroth, good for back attack, dulling something. You have the backups here that ping to break stuff. And then you have the Shiva to help dull and freeze. The only downside of that is you have to do it on your turn. And then I think this is the card that steals the show out of both decks, and that is the 4-drop Kadaj. Let's go into this a moment. So he is EX Burst, 4-drop, 9k, head of the curve, or on curve you could think of for a dark card. When Kadaj enters the field, select one of the 3 following actions. Choose one forward, dull it. Choose up to 2 cards from either player's break zone, remove them from the game. And again, going back to all the recursion that we've been talking about, or if your opponent is playing Sephiroth, you're removing stuff from their break zone so that they can't pay for him. And then the last one is choose one forward until the end of your turn. It gains plus 2,000 power and brave. And I emphasize the your turn because that'll be important in a moment. So all 3 of those abilities, not bad. Pretty good to just get a 4-drop 9k, give something plus 2k brave. You can swing, you can be aggressive. It's a very aggressive card. What makes this card so powerful is this last piece here. At the end of each of your turns, you may remove Kadaj from the game. If you do so, at the end of your opponent's turn, play Kadaj onto the field. So then you get to choose one of the abilities again and do it again. So every turn, every round, you're removing 2 cards from the break zone, or you're pumping something by 2,000 power and giving it brave, or you're dulling something. So now instead of leaving 1 forward up, your opponent has to leave 2 forwards up if they want to block. That's incredible. And if it doesn't sound amazing right off the bat, play it. After you've played it a couple times, it'll blow your mind. So absolutely love this card. In the deck that I built, I'm running actually 2 Aerith and 2 Kadaj because Kadaj is still an FF7 forward, and thus can be recurred by using Aerith. So if they do break Kadaj, then you bring them back with Aerith. You break Aerith, you play Kadaj back onto the field, and you say, deal with me. So there you have it. I know this went a little long. We have the FF7 starter decks. What are your thoughts? Let me know. And like I said, if you want to see different versions, I can build different versions of the FF7 deck. Right now, I'm working on an Earth and Fire version that I'll be posting soon. Have fun.